All right. You want to
You
start?
you can start.
Okay. Hello and welcome to Real Crime Profile. I'm Lisa Zambetti. I'm a casting director for CBS's Criminal Minds and board member of Hire Survivors Hollywood. And with me today is
I'm Jim Clemente, retired FBI profiler, former New York City prosecutor, and writer-producer of Criminal Minds. And Laura would like to be here today, but she is off having a wonderful time
she's in
at
the happiest place on earth for me, which is in the UK, man. I'm
Oh.
so jealous that she's there having all my hobnobs and all my shepherd's pie and all my
Wait a
uh
minute. Blood pudding? I mean, come on. I'm sorry, I
well,
can't
I'll
handle
pass
that.
on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to pass
Um
on that too.
And Jim, there's so much going on in the news. We kind of didn't want to do anything without her weighing in. But I was thinking what we could talk about, which I don't really know that much about,
What's
is
that?
is when the times that you have actually gone undercover and
Mm.
basically become an actor. So, that's my world is people going
Wow.
undercover in character all the time. And I don't think we've ever really talked about the times that you've been undercover and what you did to prepare to do that and how you carried on with the facade and how long you had to do that. So I was wondering if maybe we could talk about that.
Sure, we could, and I actually have, I think, some pictures of me
Oh my
undercover too.
God.
So, I think the very first undercover that I did was in what we called Skid Row in Manhattan,
Hmm.
um, and there was a bank robber who escaped from prison in Boston, and he all we know he was from New York, and his girlfriend went to a particular methadone clinic.
Hmm.
That's what we knew about him. So we thought maybe he would try to go there to meet her.
Hmm.
And so we had to stake out this location, and it was a very, very seedy location. Let me put it that way.
Hmm.
Um,
So
and
methadone, for people who don't know what methadone is. So
oh
you
yeah,
get that, like, if you are addicted to a certain
heroin.
heroin, you go. I happen to know this because my theater company was right next door to a methadone clinic. Anyway, that's my
Yeah,
experience
so
with methadone clinics.
it was a program in order to try to get people off of heroin. Methadone
Mhm.
is, I guess, easier to control and less addictive, and they thought they could wean people off heroin by giving out free methadone.
Right.
And so I don't know if that program worked or didn't work, but the point is that we thought that she would be there every day and that one day he might show up there. So we looked at the place, and there was a bank on the corner, and there was a restaurant down the street a little bit. So we put agents in there posing as a banker and posing as a waiter, and I saw that there were 4 or 5 guys who basically sat on the curb or on a
On the stoop.
ledge,
Yeah.
and then they would get up and beg from cars, and they'd sit there and drink all day. So I borrowed my friend was a roofer, so I borrowed his jeans and T-shirt, which were
Hmm.
covered with tar and stuff,
Hmm.
and then I literally put a bulletproof vest under the T-shirt and a black plastic garbage bag over my head and put my arms through it
Yeah.
so that I'd be sweating and stinking because I lived with these guys on the street for a while. So I didn't actually live with them, but I got there about 4:35 in the morning before they woke up and then left late at night after they were passed out. So
Wow.
and I sat on the side of the street with them, and I got up and begged money from cars and stuff, and I would just go and pull a dollar out of my pocket and go back and give it to the guys, and I always bought my own, like, bottle of beer, which
Did
was
you have to
just
drink? Did you
water.
drink? Oh, is this water? You didn't
It
really
was
drink
just
beer.
water.
Okay.
No, and I sat there, basically, pretending to be with them, but what was amazing about it was, talking to these guys. One of the guys, his son was a doctor at NYU Medical Center, which wasn't far away, and he said every now and then he would go to NYU, go to a phone booth, and call the hospital and have him paged to this desk just so he could see him,
Oh,
but he wouldn't let his son see him because he was embarrassed about his condition. And it just really tugged at my heart, and it was one of the first times that I really fully realized, how some people just, the luck just goes away and everything sort of undermines their life and they end up on the street. And, it's very,
Yeah.
very difficult to get off of that.
Just a sidebar for a second. I don't know if our listeners have ever watched this YouTube series called Soft White Underbelly. It is rough. It is a series that's done by this documentarian who interviews people off the streets just to say, how did you get here? What's your story? You will never look at another unhoused person the same way again. You will never look at anyone who has to sell their body to survive. Stories are so incredible,
Mm,
and it really humanizes what they've gone through to get to their situation. It's kind of incredible. So
mm.
you kind of connected with these guys?
Yeah, and and certainly, saw the humanity and the just inequity and unfairness of the world.
Yeah.
But after 2 weeks, I actually saw the guy and
The bank robber
the
guy.
bank robber guy, and he did meet up with his girlfriend, and they left, and they went down the subway, so I followed them, and they jumped the turnstile, so I jumped the turnstile.
Mhm.
The guy in the booth, the cop in the booth and in the subway station, you know, screamed out, "Pay your fare," like that. And we jumped on the train that came. And then, of course, I radioed ahead. And then at the next stop, all the agents came and arrested him. And then I had to go back because my car was by the other station. And when I'm walking out of the station, the cop sees me, and his eyes go wide, right? And he's like, pay your fare, And I walk up and I just put my FBI credentials on the
Yeah.
glass, and he sees that, and his eyes go even wider.
Right, right,
And
right,
he's
right,
like,
right.
"What?" He couldn't believe it. So that was kind of funny. Um, but the next one that I did was
Let me just go
actually.
back before
Go
keep
ahead.
that in mind. So when you're hanging out for 2 weeks with these
Yeah.
other on the stoops, like, did you have to make up a backstory? Did they ask, like, did you have to sort of convince them that you were meant to be there? Because wouldn't they sniff out, like, who's this dude suddenly hanging out with us, you know?
Well, I agree that I thought that might be a problem. I wasn't as concerned about them finding out who I was than I was the people at the methadone clinic. Um, but in fact, they never asked me how I got there. They told me some of their stories because I asked them questions, and they always were like happy because I would always get some money from cars. They're like, you're so good. I would actually be pulling the dollars out of my own pocket and then saying, here, they gave me this. And then they would go and buy a bottle of wine, and they'd share the bottle of wine. And I remember one of the guys said, yeah, you're smart not drinking the wine, beer's better for you, and that's good. But of course, so they cared about me, like I was a younger guy who was out
Mm,
down on my luck, and and I just it was a little sense of community, and they just
yeah,
let me right in. It wasn't a problem.
yeah.
What was funny was then going into the office after this.
Oh
Because
God.
my clothes stunk and I stunk, and
Yeah.
everybody thought, everybody thought I was like crazy doing it. But then I think the next undercover I did was um, on the Diamond District, and there were
Mm.
actually two cases, and I went undercover as a Hasidic Jew. It was interesting. Um, this is a picture. You can describe it to
Yeah.
them if you like,
So I see a full-headed haired Jim Clemente with a very dark beard and mustache, wearing
right?
some
And
very
then
severe looking clothes with the classic hat and
I had
top.
I had
Yeah.
the payas, the curled,
Oh, you
uh,
did. Yeah,
yeah,
the little side curls.
yeah,
Yeah. And
and
is that another cop playing your wife, I guess?
yeah, yes, and so we actually, like I said, we had two cases there. One was an extortion case where a diamond dealer was being extorted by these thugs, and another was the fact that Ian Schrager and Roy Cohn owned the Royalton Hotel. And because it was 1 block away from the Diamond District, a lot of Hasidic Jews would go there to hang out because they have to date in a public place. And so they would go to hotel lobbies, which are public places. But Roy Cohn didn't want Hasidic Jews to ruin the ambiance and the look and the brand of his really cool, super cool hotel, the Royalton, where like Madonna stayed and the Stones stayed. So he would kick them out. And so I went there to get with her to get kicked out. And in the end, though, Roy Cohn passed away during the course of that investigation. And we found out some other horrible things about him,
Yep.
what he was doing before he died. But after he passed away, they stopped kicking Hasidic Jews out
Can
of
you
the
just tell
lobby.
people who Roy Cohn was for people who
Roy
don't necessarily
Cohn
know?
was a lawyer, and he was, I mean, you should watch Citizen Cohen.
Mm-hmm.
That's about Roy Cohn, and it tells the story. But one of the things that he was reportedly doing was he found out he had AIDS, and so he was having sex with as many prostitutes on the streets of New York as he could because he wanted to spread AIDS to everybody.
Yeah, he's just one of the most
Slimy,
horrific.
despicable.
And not only that, but he was a very anti-LGBTQ
He
person.
was,
And yeah.
yeah,
But
self-hatred.
yeah, I want to get back to having to portray a Hasidic Jewish person in the Diamond District, because you haven't been
Mm-hmm.
there. That's actually where I got my engagement ring, from the Diamond
Oh,
District.
really?
Yeah, yep. And that obviously
47th Street,
uh
46th or 47th Street,
one
40.
of those, yeah.
But anyway,
But that's such a talk about a closed community where
I know.
they would know, like, who is this dude? You know,
Right.
who's your
So
family? Where are you from? Like,
a
I
lot
don't.
of the diamond dealers, though, are on the second and third and fourth and fifth floors, right, of these buildings that are on it's just the public markets, sort of are on the street level. But there's lots and lots of real diamond dealers above them in these.
Above them, yeah.
Yes. And so this was one of those diamond dealers who came to us because he was being extorted. So he's the one that told me what clothing I had to buy and wear. And he's
Mhm.
the one that kind of coached me on how to act. And all I had to do was get in there because I was in his office, right? So I was
Mhm.
inside his office with another agent. It wasn't this one that I showed you the picture of. It was another female agent who was like 8 months pregnant. All right. So she
Mhm.
played the secretary. I was his assistant. And then we had 3 agents inside the safe. So
Oh,
when these 3 thugs showed up to, extort him, he said, okay, well, the money's in the safe. So they're standing there by the safe. He unlocks the safe. There's a walk-in safe, obviously. And he opens it, and they're now facing 3 FBI agents with guns. And then they turn around, and there's me and the other female agent with guns on them as well. And we arrested them and ended that little escapade for these guys. But what was interesting about it was having to, one, get the clothing. I had to go to these shops, and they don't just sell it to anybody. So what I
mhm.
did, Lisa, hopefully you you will appreciate this. I pretended that I was an actor who
Okay.
was getting a job in a play called The Chosen Few,
Mm.
and that I wanted to be authentic. And, so I needed to wear, the clothing that,
Yeah, that's totally believable. I mean, the Diamond District is basically in the theater district. I mean,
yeah,
it's not that
it's
far
right
away.
across from it.
It's right
Right.
across from it. The one
So,
thing that is a little bit different from this undercover job, though, than your previous one, is where you could, sit there and bullshit with all the people in that community. You probably could not utter a single
well,
word
he
in
gave me
this.
a few lines. I did memorize a few lines to say hello and goodbye. But
Right,
that was
right.
about it.
Yeah, because that would be a huge tell. You wouldn't have the accent. You wouldn't know.
But okay. So then the next one that I did was I I I posed as a building inspector for the city of New York. because there was actually a child, teenager, a girl who was in a particular high school whose father was a spy from another country. And I just won't say what country.
Whoa.
Actually, a very high level spy. And so during the course of our foreign counterintelligence surveillance of this guy and his family, they picked up information through a secret source that one of her teachers was sexually victimizing her. So we had to figure out a way to get evidence of this and prevent it from happening again at the same time. And so they put me in the school to follow her. I made sure I knew all her schedule, where she had to be, and I was working, measuring things and inspecting things in the hallways. And one of the funniest things that happened was I'm outside in the hallway measuring some ducts and vents and things like that, and I hear this civics teacher say, always beware of the FBI. You never know where they are. And I wanted so
Oh
bad to
my
just
God.
knock on his door and open it up and say FBI. It was just it would have been amazing, but
You
of
would have.
course it would have blown the case. But it was just so funny, that I
Oh,
happened to be there at that moment.
wow.
But it is a very serious case. But what was crazy about it is that foreign counterintelligence agents are used to working in, suits and in pretty cushy jobs.
Hmm.
They're usually dealing with embassies and things like that. And
Hmm.
um, I saw during one of the days that I was at the school that this teacher met her in the hallway and then made an arrangement to for them to leave school, and I followed her and she met up with him and they got on the subway. And luckily, me being an experienced street agent, um, I I had a backpack with, because I was dressed in a way that I looked like a city inspector. But we got on the subway. I didn't know if we were going, into Midtown Manhattan or Bensonhurst,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so turns out we were going into Bed-Stuy,
Which is which
Bedford
is outside
Stuyvesant.
which is outside of the Manhattan Island
Hmm.
in Brooklyn.
And at the time, it was a very, very depressed and drug-riddled area.
I gotta backtrack the story for a second. So you're not surveilling. Okay. So what does her father having been a spy have to do with this story? So he's a spy for our side or for somebody
No,
else?
for
No.
somebody else. So
So you're
the
okay.
way that they became aware of this situation is a protected method of observation.
Right.
All
But
right.
you're
So we
trying to
can't
help it.
reveal that,
But you're trying to help his daughter, even though he doesn't know that you're surveilling him. She
but we
doesn't know.
can't let him know that we're surveilling him.
Right.
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 And we can't let her know because
Right.
obviously then he would know. And we have to protect the fact that we found out through a means that is secret.
Right. So you're actually trying to do something good, but nobody can know that you're trying to, because
Exactly.
you're witnessing a crime that's happening in the course of your other investigation into her father.
Right. So this
Oh
is
God.
my ID.
Oh my God. I don't know how to describe this.
Board of
Again, the
Education, City
full
of New
head.
York.
You look like a total pencil pusher, somebody who just wears khaki and beige
I think I
and
was wearing
Old
a beige.
Spice.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so I I was um on the subway following them, right? And we go to Bed-Stuy, and sure enough, they get off in Bed-Stuy. So I had a hoodie and a headphones, but I had the headphones plugged into my FBI radio, right?
Mhm.
And I have the eye, right? So I'm the one closest to the subject and I'm following them, but since I followed them on the train, I don't want to be following them on foot. So when I got out of the subway, I see the lead agent off to the side. So I walk up to him. As I'm walking up to him, now I have when he saw me last time, I looked like that, right? I would look
Uh-huh.
like a inspector nerd. Now I
Mhm.
got a hoodie on and headphones and a backpack, and I'm hunched over, and I'm walking up to him, and he thinks I'm about to mug him. So
Oh.
he goes to pull his gun on me, and I'm like, dude, you know, and he was like, he couldn't believe it, but he's still wearing his suit. So anyway, so I get out of the subway and I run. I take a right, I run for one block, I take a left, run for one block, and take another left to try to get to where they're going to be. So I'm running around three sides of a block while they're walking one side. And
Uh-huh.
I tuck into a door, a doorway that's recessed because it starts to rain. And I'm standing there, and sure enough, they walk by, right? And some other guy, from the neighborhood comes up and stands next to me, and he goes, "Damn, what's with all the 5-0 in the neighborhood?" And I look around the corner, and there's 8 foreign counterintelligence agents all wearing like, you know, friggin' suits and,
Mm.
Brooks Brothers raincoats and umbrellas walking up the street
My God. So
in
he
in
made them.
Bed-Stuy. He made them in a
Yeah.
second. This was just a random guy. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, damn, I don't know what's going on. What are we gonna do? And he goes, I got a place. And he takes me to this gang
Oh,
clubhouse.
Jesus. Right?
It was
Oh my
crazy.
God. This is like
But
you couldn't write you
I
couldn't
had
write
to
this.
roll with it. I had to
Yeah.
roll with it. And then, as soon as they walked by, I said, "All right, well, they're gone. I don't know what the fuck's going on, but I'm getting out of here, man." And so I left. But actually, what I did was then get back and follow them. And they went to a motel. And as soon as they got in the room, we kicked in the door and arrested him.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
It was
Wow.
crazy. But then the next day, we understood that the girl was sent back to her home country, and the day following that, her father was just disappeared from the country. So,
From our country, from the
yes, from
US.
our country.
So
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm
Well,
sure
he
they
owes
just
you a
pulled him back
big
home.
thank you. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, but he's not that kind of guy. He
yeah.
was a very, very bad guy. But
Yeah.
um, anyway, that was an interesting case. And then the next one that I did was the deepest cover I went, and the longest one, which was on the New York Mercantile Exchange. It was on the floor of the NYMEX. I was trading crude oil futures. It was insane because the Gulf War broke out, and crude oil trading went crazy. It went from like $17 a barrel to $80 a barrel, and each contract is 10,000 barrels of crude oil. I mean, think about it. It's a lot. And
Mm.
so every penny that the stock goes up is worth $10,000.
Wow.
So if you can do the math, when it goes from $17 to $80, there's a lot of money being made. And
Mhm.
so people are betting on the volatility and all sorts of stuff. But it was crazy. And I have let me here's my ID for
Okay.
that
So
one.
now, oh my goodness. So now Jim has got long hair,
Slick back with
slicked
round
back.
glasses, and
Oh my God. This is
I
straight
look.
out of what is a Christian Bale movie? Oh God, I'll have to remember where he plays like a stockbroker. Anyway, yeah.
If you want to know how horrible it was on that floor, you should just put in YouTube a search Robert Downey Jr. and commodities exchange. And it's about a 45-second or a minute or something video. And he spends like half an hour on the floor where I had to spend 3 years working.
Three
And
years?
yes, 3 years I was undercover there. And he spends about a half hour there, and he comes out and he uses every expletive known to man
Yeah.
to describe the people and the situation there. He was just horrified by
Yeah.
it, and I literally had to be there for 3 years. It was insane, and I wrote a script about it. Hopefully, one day soon, I'll be making a
But
movie
how
about it.
did you prepare to be on the floor like that? So I, as an actress in New York. I worked on many, many desks, many, many trading desks, and
Yeah.
it is a very intense place. You have grown men screaming at each other. They are disheveled. They stink. Well, at that time, people were smoking, and it's
Yeah.
like, it's very, very intense. But these people understand the stock market, they understand finances and stuff. How did you fit
Right. I
into
never
that
I never
world?
took a single course in it. What I did was I got a job as a clerk. I worked there for 6 months, learning, what the clerks do and then what the brokers do. And I got the books and I studied for my Series 3, Series 7, and Series 63. And then after 6 months, I told my boss, they're going to give a test soon. I want to take a test for my broker's license. And my boss is like, who the F do you think you are? It's like, this guy took 7 years, that guy took 9 years, that guy took 12 years. You've been here for less than a year. And I was like, yeah, but I'm ready. And he was like, F me, F you, like, go ahead, try it. So,
Oh
of
my
course,
God.
I took the test and did great. I got the second highest mark in the class. But then they have the practical. They put us in the pit with like 30 traders after hours, and they light up the boards, and then they give you all these trades, and you have to do them like, instantly. And it's all hand and eye movement. It's all like math and writing things
Oh,
down and throwing cards in the middle and doing all this stuff and recording all the trades. And while I'm in there doing this, I noticed that they light up the the unleaded gasoline and the heating oil boards as well. And this is after hours. So I'm like, there's only one reason they would be doing that, and that is to do what's called a butterfly trade. So crude oil is the mothership, okay? And when you distill it into heating oil or unleaded gasoline, okay? So it costs, like, let's say $3 a barrel to distill it from crude oil into these things that we use, right? So that if you are this is there's a trade called a butterfly, where the body of the butterfly is the crude oil and the wings are the distillates, the unleaded and the heating oil. So if the price the of the two, like the heating oil and the unleaded, is more than $3, which is how much it costs to turn it from crude oil into one of those things,
uh-huh.
then you're going to buy or sell based on how big that gap is. It's a very complicated thing.
Wow, I'm
There's
already
one
confused. Yeah.
trader. There's one trader who was a taxi driver who has like a beautiful mind and saw numbers everywhere. There's only one trader who did butterfly trades for the NYMEX. One guy. Everybody gave all their butterfly trades to him, and he would execute them, because you have to stand between all three pits and you have to yell out to all three pits at the same time, buying crude, selling unleaded and heating oil. And it's just incredibly insane. And I was like, my boss is going to give me a butterfly trade. I know it. So I started looking at all three boards at the same time. Now, each board has all the last 10 trades for every month out for 18 months. So there's 180 trades on each board every second, right? And it's constantly changing. So you just have to be able to take all that in. And it was
Yeah.
insane. It was
Oh God.
insane. But I was, challenged, and I, rise
You
to the challenge,
Jake
So
Clem, bringing
so
the full
I
Clementi. I love
I
it.
sure as hell I get a butterfly trade from my boss, and I see him sitting back, and he's so smug because he knows that there's no way I'm going to be able to do it. And I jump out into the middle of the three rings, and I start screaming out, "I'm buying, Augie, I'm selling," and it and I actually do the trade. And you could have seen his head explode. I mean, it just got so red. He was so certain that I was gonna F
Mess
it
it up.
up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That I was not going to be able to do it, but somehow, I was able to pull it together, and they had to give me my trading license. So
Oh my
from that point
God.
on, I was a broker on the exchange, and it was insane
Can you tell me
because
about how old you were at the time? Or you
yeah,
can what?
this was 89, 90, 91. So I was 30, to 31.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
one thing I know about this, not you can't just walk the walk on the floor. You gotta walk the walk. Those people work hard and they fucking
Oh,
party
oh my God.
hard.
I know.
So I mean, I don't know if you had
That was
a
tough. What I had to
backstory.
do,
Yeah.
yeah, what I had to do was when I went out to the bars with them, I would constantly go to the bathroom, dump out the beer. I would always get dark bottles of beer, so I could go in the bathroom, dump it out, fill it up with water, go back out and drink with them. Because after we got done drinking, which they did very often, I had to go to the apartment and do all my paperwork. I had to
Mm.
do the transcript from the day before. I had to tell my contact agent what kind of illegal deals I did that day and what things were brewing. And I had to make all these reports. I had to proof the ones from the day before that because
Yeah.
somebody would have transcribed them. And it was just a ton of work. I was working 20-hour days. And then I
Oh.
had to analyze the market. I had to know what these
Jesus.
brokers knew, so I knew how to trade.
Wait, did we say what the client who was your target? I can't remember if we mentioned what the
We
target
didn't
was.
mention it, but
Okay.
the target was these brokers in on the commodities exchange. Nothing was done electronically. All the trades were done by eye and hand signals.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these guys who know each other can do a lot of criminal acts,
Mm.
trading in front of the customers, dumping off bad trades to customers, not so they wouldn't lose money, pawning it off on other people's customers, to help them out, all sorts of different things, bucketing, front running, insider trading, all that,
Mhm.
um, running up the market, pretending that there's a frenzy that because there's some news that's coming out, and then
Mhm.
getting everybody all hyped up and the price starts to rise because of that. And then realizing that they bought really cheap. And then as soon as the price got up there, they dumped all their stocks and then the
Mhm.
price fell back down. So they just create a market rise that only hurts the customers out in the real world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, you're just taking me back. I mean, I was on the desk much, much later than you were,
I had no
but
idea
I
that you were
remember,
on the desk.
yeah, but those guys, I say, I'm sure that they were doing more than just drinking beer. Let me put it that way. And they got to take clients out. They got to take them, give those guys a good time. There's a lot of
There
stuff
was a
that
lot of
happens,
slimy stuff that was going on every
but
day there, and it was
yeah,
hard. It
it's
was very
hard.
hard to be able to avoid that.
I gotta tell you, I worked on, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Bank, all those desks. And I was at that time, I was like the number one requested temp on those desks. And
Really?
you wanna know why?
Why?
Because whenever I would answer the phone, I would be, Mr. Clemente's office. Can I help you? And they fucking
Loved it.
loved that because I'm
I
talking
was
about
wondering where you got that
I
voice from.
I'm answering phones for like really low level analysts, like guys who like have
Yeah,
no because it's such a status ladder in
right.
places. But
So
whoever I was working for, I would just love up that phone when I would answer it. And they're like, I want that girl to come back and answer my
well, there's a smart woman, yes.
phone.
So anyway, that was
Yeah.
a crazy, crazy time, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But I I worked at the World Trade Center,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and I lived right across the street. And so on 9/11, when I went back there, um, you know, the the building where I lived, all the windows were blown out, and and the trade center was gone, and it was unbelievable. Like the fifth
Yeah.
day that I was there, I finally walked around to the north side of the World Trade Center property, and I could see my apartment, and it was like that was so bizarre because forever that there were two mountains in
Right.
between
Right.
there and my apartment,
That's
which
right.
was in Battery Park City. And it was unbelievable. It was
Yeah.
such a massive destruction. But anyway, so those are most of
Yeah.
the undercover operations that I did. And, you know, I loved it because it was such a challenge. Still have this.
Hmm.
Um, and I have talked to some actors about it before, and acting can be hard, and certainly being, a method actor, and sort of living what you're acting, is difficult, but that's, you can turn it on and off and it's not life threatening.
Hmm.
But this is 24 hours a day,
Yeah.
7 days a week for 3 years, and it's difficult.
And
And
so many people are counting on you not to blow your cover. I mean, the
yeah,
stakes are
oh, there were so many
so
things
much
that went on.
higher. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
and I got to know Joe Pistone, who went undercover in the mafia, and there's been a couple of movies made about him,
Mhm.
but uh, he probably was under some greater threats to his life, but the work that he did was all fake. You
Mm.
know, for me, I had to actually become a broker. I actually had to trade
Crazy.
these futures on the exchange for millions, in fact hundreds of millions of dollars passing through our hands every day, and the stress was just unbelievable. But at the same time, you know some of these guys are real thugs,
Yeah.
and one guy did put a hit on me. you know
What?
yeah,
Oh my God.
after they found out,
After they, oh
so
yeah. So that's the other thing I want to say. So I mean, obviously, even after you're done with the assignment, you don't want people to know your face because that precludes you from other assignments. So but then again, you want to show your face like, hey, motherfucker, I'm the one that you were, who
right.
caught you. So
But the problem was that we had a sister operation going on in Chicago, Board of Trade, um and that's where like wheat and pork bellies and things like that are traded. And when they took that one down, that market tanked. And basically the head of the CFTC, Commodities Futures Trading Commission, met with Louis Freeh and said, if you take down crude oil and people lose confidence in crude oil and unleaded gasoline and heating oil and gold, then the entire economy of the US could fail. So they decided that we weren't going to do a big takedown, that we were going to silently approach each of these people one at a time, have them wear a wire against other people,
mm,
plead to something and get some sweet deal. And it never really made the news even.
mm,
So it was really disappointing after putting in 3 years of my life and working literally 20-hour days. And so, that's one of the
oh,
downsides of, doing big cases. Sometimes
right, right. It
they're
doesn't have
they're
the
really
Hollywood. It
costly.
doesn't have the Hollywood ending for
No,
sure.
no.
Mm-mm.
All right, but that's enough for now. I think
Yep,
my voice is
absolutely.
being stressed to the max as it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that you didn't become a stock trader after all of
Oh,
that.
oh
I'm
my
glad that
God.
you
The
continue to
last thing I would
serve
want to do.
us.
I will tell you one more thing and that is that one of the guys who we ended up getting 6 agents on the floor, and one of the other guys actually became a broker too.
Oh wow.
And he met this girl, and they kind of they dated for a while, but then she didn't really respond to him that well, and then she kind of brushed him off. And what it turned out was that she broke up with him because he was a broker. And afterwards, when she found out that he was actually an FBI agent, they got back together and they got married. They had a bunch of kids and they're still together.
Oh, happy
So,
ending. I love
yeah, but
it.
it was the disgusting nature of who those brokers are. And I really encourage everybody to Google or YouTube Robert Downey Jr. and the Commodities Exchange, and you will
Hmm.
get an earful. Just be ready for a lot of
A
nasty
lot of
words.
profanity. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was American Psycho is a movie I was trying to think of that
Oh,
Christian Bale
okay.
was in. That's you kind of look a little American Psycho
Yeah.
in that
Well,
little picture there.
maybe
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of stuff back then.
Well,
All right.
thank you, Jim, for
Thank you,
walking the
Lisa.
walk and walking us through that experience. We really appreciate your service to our
Thanks.
country. And we are missing Laura today, but she'll be back with us again next time. But for now, this is Real Crime Profile signing out.
Great.